Okay, in this video, we're going to look at how to create or add a test or a quiz. So once you're in Schoology, you'll want to go into a particular course or a sandbox course, and then you'll be on the materials tab. From here, if we go to add materials, we can add a test or a quiz. So I'm going to select that option. The first thing that pops up is just the general, to give a little bit of background information on the test and the quiz. Once you say create, you will go into actually creating the questions. So the test and quiz feature in Schoology is a built-in test quiz feature through the platform, this platform specifically. If you are a district that say uses Google products, you might be using Google Forms for quizzes, and you can always link those separately. So you don't have to use the test and quiz feature, but if you are fully using Schoology, this is how you would add like formative assessment or survey or something for your students. So let's just call this quiz 1. Due date. So you'll just pick on your calendar. You don't have to select a due date, but if you want to, this is, you just need to select the day and month. So let's just say it's due on the 14th. And if you do have a due date, you do need to select a time. So I'm just going to say 7 p.m. And let's say this is worth 10 points. I've sold at 10 points. I'm just going to select ungraded for now because I don't have any categories. Again, depending on your district setup, you might have categories pre-assigned for you. If not, you can set those up through the gradebook and grade setup, which will be in a different video. The period defaults to whatever the period is for your course. Factor is just, do you want this to be weighted more or less than anything else that's worth 10 points? So you can change that here if you'd like. Scale, just like category, your district may have set up different scales for you. So that's depending on what you have, you can decide what you want. I'll just leave this as numeric. And then options at the bottom are very similar to what you saw in the assignments video. But the first thing is if I want to individually assign. So maybe there were some students that really struggled with a certain topic and I just want to check in with them one more time. I might just assign this to, 4 students who I know were struggling previously and now I just kind of want to see where they're at. If you leave that unchecked or unhighlighted, it will be available to all students. The next one is to publish to students. So I'm going to uncheck this and I'll show you how to change that once you have it created. So if I want to create something, but I'm not going to use it for a week, I might make sure that's unpublished. And then I just need to remember to go in and change it later. Grade statistics. Again, when we get into gradebook and grade setup, if that's something that you're interested in, that option is available here. And then comments. So if you leave comments enabled, students can ask questions on the post. This last option at the far right is not available to me yet, but if you had questions that had been created for this test or quiz, you could copy it so that you don't have to redo all of the work for each individual quiz. So if I like to give a quiz at the end of every unit, I might do the first one and then maybe I'll copy it for each unit and then I just have to go in and change the questions, but I don't have to change a lot of the structure. So that will be available once you have questions created for your test or quiz. So once you have all of this information, you're going to say create. And now it takes you to the screen where you're actually going to add questions. So at the top, we can see all of the different options as we go through making this quiz. So I'm going to say add a question. And this is where I have all of the different options available to me. So I can from a question bank, import test or quiz. I can also do a page break. So if you have something that ends up being pretty long, maybe you want kids to only see certain questions at a time. Oops, I'm going to say cancel. But this top section is where you get all the different types of questions that you might want to ask. So let's do a multiple choice question. So for here, I might ask a question. What is the best season in the year? So then choice, then you have your different choice options. So you would put in your different choices. You can add more choices or leave some blank. So you have quite a few that you could go up to 15. You can remove blanks. So if you've got lots of stuff going on here and then you want to clean it up. So show feedback allows you to give feedback for each answer and or the whole question. So if this were a question that, you know, you had some distractors in here, you might say, if a student selected fall, maybe I'd want to give them some feedback on why that maybe isn't quite the right answer, or maybe point them in a direction for them to go and do some more learning and then come back to the quiz. So feedback is a nice option for formative assessments. So you can give feedback right in the moment for students. So on here, I can select the correct answer, and that's going to allow the Schoology to grade some of these things for you. So I'm just going to say summer is the correct answer. I can also randomize choices if I want them to always be in a different order for students. I can allow partial credit if there's more than one correct answer. So for this option, I can say if they've said spring or summer, both of those are right. And I could allow partial credit. So anything with a little question mark will tell you a little bit more about that feature. Timed question is if you want students to only have 2 minutes or whatever it is. So if I do timed question, I can put in how many minutes I want that to be. And then grading, how many point values. So if I want this to be, I've said 2 answers are appropriate, maybe it's worth 2 points. I can also do allow partial credit. So it's a proportional point value for each correct answer. So if they did, because I said this was 2 points, if they only said one of them, they'd get 1 point. I can also, anytime you see a line, I can align it to a state standard. So if you're someone or your district is using standards-based grading, that align feature is right there in Schoology. So from here, you don't want to click on one of these tabs. It's going to take you away from the question. That's a mistake you'll probably make at least once. But if you do that, you lose all the work that you just did. So before you move on to any of these other settings or preview or anything, you want to make sure that you create the question. And now that's question number 1. So all of the questions that you have, you would just keep adding questions using whatever type that you have here until you're ready and your quiz or your test is done. You can reorder. You can add questions to a bank if you know that you're going to use questions for several different times. You might add them just so they're handy and you don't have to go through all that work each time. So once you have all of your questions set up, there's also little settings over here. You can edit, you can delete. You can also add to bank directly question by question. So then we're going to go over to settings. So instructions, if you need to provide any context for students, you can add whatever that verbiage is here. Submissions, you can enable and tell or have a from and to. So if you want students to have access for a week, you can put the dates to start and stop submissions being able to be there. Time limit, attempt limit. So if you want students to be able to take this multiple times. So there's all kinds of options in here. So if you want students to be able to start and stop, so resumable allows students to resume an incomplete. So there's lots of options within testing quizzes that you can kind of customize depending on what your purpose is with students. And then there's some printing options as well. So if students are printing these out for some reason, you might just kind of check on here if that's something that your students will need. Again, you'll want to make sure you save changes before you move on. So anything that you've put in here will not be saved until you click that save. I can preview my test or my quiz. I can start a new attempt. The results, once students start submitting, you can see what their final score was and view it. If you've allowed multiple attempts, you can view their different attempts. And then if you had any comments that students wrote, you can see what those are here. So I'm going to go back to my materials homepage so that I can see where this quiz is. So because I added it through the add materials, it just came at the bottom of the page. So, and it was unpublished, and it tells me that here on the actual quiz itself. If I am, like, let's say it's a week later and I now want to publish this, I now need to make it visible for students. So I'm going to go over to the right hand, the little settings wheel, and I can click publish. And it just wants me to double check, yes, I want to publish quiz number 1. Now, if I publish, now students are able to actually see this quiz. So again, that unpublish or publish button is in that settings wheel to the right. So from here, if I, again, like some of the other things that we've looked at, if I want this quiz to actually be part of Unit 1, I can drag quiz 1 up into Unit 1, or if I want it in subfolder, wherever it makes sense for the structure of your course, and I drop it, now quiz 1 is part of Unit 1. So that is how you add a quiz or a test. So using the add materials, add test or quiz through the materials tab of Schoology.